There's a part of you that you've never really met. You cover it up with politeness, with smiles, with carefully chosen words. You even hide it from yourself. But it waits. It watches. And when you least expect it, it acts. Carl Jung called this hidden part of you the shadow. It's the side of the psyche that holds everything you deny, repress, and exile. Your anger, your envy, your cruelty, your lust, your shame, all the impulses you've buried in the name of being good, normal, acceptable. But here's the truth. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you hide it. It festers. It grows stronger in the dark. And one day it breaks through, sometimes as rage, sometimes as self-destruction, sometimes as the quiet whisper that says, "You are not who you pretend to be." Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that for a moment. What if the mistakes you've made, the patterns you can't break, the addictions you fall into, the people you hurt, weren't accidents? What if it was the shadow, pulling the strings from behind the curtain of your mind? We live in a world obsessed with light, with positivity, with self-improvement, with curating the perfect image of ourselves. But Jung reminds us of a darker truth. The path to wholeness isn't found by denying the shadow, but by facing it, because the shadow you refuse to face becomes the master you cannot escape. And tonight, we're going to step into that darkness. We'll explore where the shadow comes from, how it rules your life, why it appears in myths and stories across time, and most importantly, how you can confront it without being destroyed. This isn't self-help. This isn't positive thinking. This is war, the war within yourself. And the shadow is waiting. No one is born carrying a shadow. A child enters the world as a bundle of raw instincts, crying, reaching, laughing, screaming. Pure life, unfiltered. But very quickly, the training begins. Think back to when you were young. When you cried too loudly, someone told you stop making noise. When you showed anger, someone said, don't be so aggressive. When you felt fear, someone insisted, be brave, don't be weak. Piece by piece, society carved you down. Parents, teachers, friends, religion, culture, all worked to shape you into something acceptable. And every time you learned what was good, you also learned what was bad. If kindness was rewarded, then cruelty had to be hidden. If obedience was praised, then rebellion had to be buried. If innocence was cherished, then desire had to be silenced. That was the birth of your shadow. Jung called it the personal unconscious, the parts of yourself pushed out of sight, forced underground. And the more you learned to wear a mask for the world, what Jung named the persona, the larger your shadow grew behind it. Picture it like this. You walk through life holding a lantern. Everything the light touches becomes part of the self you show others, your manners, your talents, your accomplishments. But behind you, the lantern always casts a shadow. And the brighter you try to shine your persona, the darker your shadow becomes. The tragedy is, this is unavoidable. You can't grow up in society without creating a shadow. To belong, to survive, to be loved, you learn to cut pieces of yourself away. But here's the paradox. The shadow doesn't disappear. The child told, don't be angry, doesn't lose their anger, they bury it. The one told, don't be selfish, doesn't lose their desire, they disguise it. The one told, don't cry, doesn't stop hurting, they just suffer in silence. All of those rejections, all of those exiles, become fuel for the unconscious. By the time you reach adulthood, you are no longer one person. You are two. The persona you present to the world, polished, controlled, respectable, and the shadow that lurks beneath, raw, instinctual, denied. You think you're in control. But in truth, the shadow has been shaping you all along. Because every time you repress a part of yourself, you don't destroy it, you give it power. And that power waits, growing stronger in the dark, We all wear a mask. Not the physical kind, but the invisible one Carl Jung called the persona. The persona is your social face. It's the role you play at work, with friends, online, even in your own family. It's the version of you that's designed to be accepted, admired, and safe. But here's the dangerous truth. The stronger your persona, the stronger your shadow. Think about it. The humble man who always acts selfless may be drowning in resentment. The polite, charming woman may be hiding a fury she doesn't dare admit. The confident entrepreneur may secretly shake with insecurity. The persona itself isn't evil. We need it. Without it, society would fall apart. If everyone expressed every raw impulse, every selfish urge, every burst of rage, we'd live in chaos. But the persona comes at a cost. The more you identify with the mask, the more you forget the person underneath it. You begin to mistake the mask for your true self. And soon the shadow isn't just hidden, it's forgotten. Jung warned us. When we identify with the persona, we become identical with the mask, and the true individual self is buried beneath it. It's like living your life on stage. You've been playing the role for so long that even you start to believe it's real. But backstage, the shadow waits. And the more you deny it, the louder it demands to be seen. That's why people are often shocked by their own behavior. The moral preacher caught in scandal, the kind teacher who suddenly explodes, the devoted partner who sabotages their own relationship. These aren't accidents. They're the shadow breaking through the persona. And here's the chilling part. The persona doesn't just hide the shadow from others, it hides the shadow from you. You don't realize how angry you are. You don't realize how envious you are. You don't realize how much you crave power, lust, or revenge. Until one day it bursts out, and you hear yourself saying the same words countless people have said after disaster. I don't know what came over me, but something did come over you. It was the shadow reminding you that you can't bury it forever. The truth is this: you can't escape the mask, but you can learn to see beyond it. Because until you do, the shadow will control you in ways you'll never understand. And the longer you pretend to be only the persona, the harder the shadow will fight to return. You may think you control your shadow. You may believe it's buried, locked away, irrelevant. But the shadow is patient, and if ignored long enough, it always finds a way to strike back. Jung warned us. The shadow never disappears. It only shows up in disguise. And the most common disguise is projection. Think about the people you despise the most, the ones who trigger you instantly. The liar, the arrogant boss, the selfish friend. Why do they provoke you so deeply? Because Jung would say they're holding up a mirror. They reflect the very qualities you've exiled in yourself. You hate their arrogance because you've buried your own hunger for recognition. You rage at their selfishness because you've smothered your own desires. You mock their weakness because you've never made peace with your own fear. Projection is the shadow's way of forcing you to see what you refuse to admit. But instead of recognizing it, you fight it in others. You push the inner war out into the world. And projection is only the beginning. The shadow also reveals itself through addiction. Think about what addiction really is. A craving so powerful it bypasses reason, rules, and willpower. It's the shadow demanding to be fed. Alcohol numbs the pain you refuse to face. Workaholism covers the worthlessness you won't admit. Porn, gambling, endless scrolling. All of it is a bargain you make with the shadow. Leave me alone, and I'll give you this. But the shadow never bargains in good faith. It always takes more than it gives. And when projection and addiction aren't enough, the shadow turns to its most brutal weapon: self-sabotage. Have you noticed how you ruin the very things you claim to want? You procrastinate until opportunities disappear. You push away the people who love you most. You destroy relationships, careers, even your own health. This isn't weakness. It isn't bad luck. It's the shadow enforcing its presence. It whispers, "If you refuse to acknowledge me, I'll make sure you feel me." And so you repeat cycles you swore you'd escape, not because you're cursed, but because you're haunted. haunted by the parts of yourself you've locked away. The shadow's revenge is never gentle. It wants one thing only: to be seen. And until you turn to face it, it will poison your life in ways you cannot control. This is why Jung insisted. Confronting the shadow is not optional. It's necessary for survival. Because the shadow you deny becomes the destiny you live. The shadow isn't just personal, it's collective. Humanity itself has a shadow, and it has been telling its story for thousands of years. Every myth, every religion, every culture has a figure that embodies the darkness we deny. In ancient Greece, it was Hades, ruler of the underworld. In Christianity, it was Satan, the fallen angel. In Hindu mythology, it was Ravana, the demon king of arrogance and desire. Why do these figures appear in every culture? Because the shadow is not only inside you, it's inside all of us. Jung believed myths aren't just stories, they're mirrors of the psyche. When we speak of monsters, demons, villains, and devils, we're not describing something out there. We're describing the shadow within. That's why children's fairy tales are filled with witches, wolves, and dark forests. Why every hero must face a dragon, descend into the underworld, or confront a dark twin. Because the human soul knows instinctively, wholeness requires a confrontation with the shadow. But here's the most dangerous truth. When an individual denies their shadow, it destroys their personal life. When a society denies its shadow, it creates catastrophe. History is a graveyard of civilizations that refuse to face their darkness. The horrors of war, the scapegoating of minorities, the rise of tyrants. These are not random accidents of politics, they are eruptions of the collective shadow. Think of the witch hunts in medieval Europe. Communities projected their fear, envy, and hatred onto innocent women, burning them as if killing others could purify themselves. Think of the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century. Whole nations denied their weakness, their fear, their shadow, and projected it outward, inventing enemies everywhere, justifying cruelty in the name of purity. And today? Do you really think we're immune? Look at the rage on social media. Look at how fast crowds form to destroy someone's reputation. Look at how we demonize those who think differently. This isn't progress. This is the collective shadow, amplified by technology, broadcast to millions, disguised as righteousness. Because when a society forgets its shadow, it doesn't disappear. It organizes, it grows, and it demands blood. This is why Jung warned that self-awareness isn't a luxury, it's survival. Because when enough individuals confront their shadows, the collective shadow weakens. But when too many deny it, the world itself becomes a mirror of the darkness we refuse to face. And if you look closely at the world right now, you'll see the shadow is rising again. If the shadow is so dark, so destructive, so dangerous, how do we face it without being consumed? This was Jung's greatest challenge, because he understood the shadow is not meant to be destroyed. It cannot be. It's part of you. The task is not annihilation, it's integration. But integration is not easy. It begins with the most terrifying act of all, honesty. You must be willing to look at yourself without the mask, to see the envy, the lust, the greed, the cruelty, and admit, this too is me. Not to justify it, not to indulge it, but to acknowledge its existence. Because as long as you refuse to see it, the shadow controls you in secret. But the moment you admit it, you take back the power. Step 1 is awareness. Step 2 is ownership. When you catch yourself projecting, blaming others for what you won't admit in yourself, you pause. You ask, what in them am I refusing to face in me? When an addiction tempts you, instead of shaming yourself, you ask, what pain am I trying to escape? When you sabotage yourself, you stop calling it bad luck and recognize it for what it is, the shadow demanding attention. This is the slow, difficult work of integration, not by suppressing the shadow, not by indulging it, but by dialoguing with it. Jung even encouraged what he called active imagination, speaking to the shadow through meditation, dreams, or writing, asking it, "What do you want from me? What truth am I hiding? What strength have I buried in you?" Because here's the paradox. The shadow is not only darkness, it holds light as well. Buried inside are not just your vices, but your power, your creativity, your boldness, your primal energy, qualities you suppressed because they were too much, too dangerous, or unacceptable. When you integrate the shadow, you don't just confront your demons, you reclaim your strength. The anger you feared becomes courage, the envy becomes ambition, the lust becomes passion, the fear becomes wisdom. This is why Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." True transformation doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from walking into the cave you fear most and discovering the treasure hidden inside. But make no mistake, integration doesn't mean you're suddenly free of the shadow. It isn't a one-time victory. It's a lifelong dialogue, a balancing act, a dance with the darkness. The goal is not purity, the goal is wholeness. And wholeness is only possible when you stop dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable and embrace the truth. You are both, light and dark, order and chaos, mask and shadow. Only then can you stop being ruled by the parts of yourself you refuse to see. So we arrive at the end, and yet the beginning. Because the shadow is not something you understand once and leave behind. It is a lifelong companion, a voice that whispers in the dark, a mirror that shows you what you would rather not see. Most people will run from it. They build masks, identities, excuses, distractions, anything to avoid facing themselves. They spend their entire lives chasing the light, all while being dragged by the darkness they refuse to acknowledge. But now you know the truth. The shadow you refuse to face becomes the enemy that destroys you. The shadow you choose to face becomes the ally that transforms you. It will not be easy. You will lose parts of yourself you once thought were essential. You will have to admit things about yourself you swore could not be true. You will feel the pull of chaos, the temptation of rage, the lure of power. But through it all, something awakens. A strength deeper than morality, a clarity sharper than denial, a wholeness that cannot be shaken. Because once you face your shadow, you are no longer afraid of yourself. And once you are no longer afraid of yourself, the world loses its power to manipulate you. No insult can break you. No temptation can control you. No enemy can define you. Because you know, the worst enemy you ever had was already inside you, and you've met them face to face. Jung believed humanity's greatest crisis is not one of technology, politics, or economics, but of the soul. We have forgotten the shadow, and in forgetting we are consumed by it. But if even a few choose to turn inward, to confront the darkness within, to integrate instead of deny, then perhaps humanity has a chance. And perhaps you do too. So let me leave you with this. The next time you feel envy rise in your chest, don't look away. The next time anger boils inside you, don't suppress it. The next time you dream of something violent, shameful, or strange, don't dismiss it. Lean closer. Look deeper. Ask yourself, what part of me have I abandoned here? Because in that answer lies your shadow, and in your shadow lies your future. The war is not out there. It never was. It is inside. And the battlefield is you. Face it, or be ruled by it. The choice is yours.